What happens when dozens of American Apache helicopters suddenly appear near Poland's border, just a few hundred kilometers from Russian radar coverage? Is this just a routine military exercise, or the quiet opening move of a far deeper psychological chess game? Tonight we peel back the layers of this strange maneuver to find out whether the sky over Eastern Europe is preparing for a message or a mistake. Welcome to Novastra Defense, the channel where we decode military movements, technology, and strategy, not through speculation, but with reason, humor, and a healthy dose of curiosity. We are not here to glorify conflict. We are here to understand the strange theater of modern deterrence, where every takeoff and radar ping could mean a statement louder than any speech. It all began quietly. In the early hours of a gray morning, locals in western Poland spotted something unusual. Waves of US Army helicopters, Apaches, Blackhawks, and Chinooks, slicing through the mist in tight formation. According to flight trackers and defense observers, over 40 aircraft had moved from Germany toward Poland within hours. Officially, this was a scheduled rotation exercise. Unofficially, the timing couldn't have been more precise or more suspicious, because at that exact same moment, Russia was conducting live fire drills in Kaliningrad, its heavily fortified exclave wedged between Poland and Lithuania. Coincidence? Perhaps. But in geopolitics, coincidences are like UFOs. Interesting, but never really random. Polish radar operators noted the unusual pattern. Russian early warning stations, hundreds of miles east, lit up like Christmas trees. Within hours, state media in Moscow was already asking, why now? Why this show of power? The Apache, a symbol of US strike precision, isn't just a helicopter. It's a flying reminder that America can appear anywhere, anytime. For Russia, seeing those silhouettes hovering on NATO's eastern edge was like spotting a rival's chess piece leaning over the board before you. He made your move. Could this be a test? One military analyst asked on Russian TV, and that's exactly what many in the West believe. Not a provocation, but a probe. The US might be quietly testing how fast Russian radar systems respond, how their communication chains relay alerts, how quickly they deploy interceptors. Think of it like a scientist running an experiment. If I introduce X stimulus, how does the system react? Except this lab involves billion-dollar machines and real pilots in the cockpit. As the Apaches refueled at an airbase in Poland, Russia's response came swiftly but predictably. S-400 missile batteries were activated in Kaliningrad. Su-35 fighters took off to patrol the Baltic skies. Russian defense channels issued subtle warnings. Phrases like readiness maintained and message received. In translation, we're watching you. The West answered back in silence. But that's the beauty of deterrence. The loudest conversations often happen without a single word. Now behind these theatrics lies a far deeper layer, a game of perception. For decades, military power hasn't only been about who fires first, but who appears unafraid to. The US doesn't need to send a note to Moscow. It just needs to send helicopters to the border and let the radar echoes do the talking. In turn, Russia doesn't need to respond with force. Just by turning on its S-400 systems, it sends a counter-message. We're not blinking either. It's a dance of signals, psychological, strategic, even performative, where both sides pretend not to care, while meticulously measuring the other's every move. Here's where it gets fascinating. Defense analysts suggest this movement wasn't just about Russia. It was about NATO itself. The US could be testing how quickly its European partners react under simulated pressure, how well Poland coordinates with Germany, how smoothly logistics flow when dozens of aircraft need fuel, maintenance, and airspace clearance on short notice. In other words, it's not just a message to Moscow, it's a rehearsal for the alliance. And if that sounds familiar, It asks because deterrence today is as much about rehearsing peace as it is about preparing for war. But let S play the what-if scenario, because that's where things get truly interesting. Suppose a radar operator somewhere in Kaliningrad misreads a signal. An Apache's radar signature looks suspiciously like a missile. Alarms sound. A missile defense system locks on automatically. A pilot, panicked by radar warnings, veers off course. Within seconds, both sides are guessing what's real. And in modern warfare, guesses can become headlines faster than reason can intervene. It sounds absurd, yet history is full of moments where small misreads nearly changed everything. One wrong code, one false signal, one anxious commander, and suddenly, a world on edge holds its breath. So why does this matter? Because beneath all the noise, this episode exposes a fragile truth. Peace today doesn't collapse in explosions. It evaporates in misunderstandings. When military posturing becomes routine, when exercises blur into real alerts, the line between deterrence and danger becomes as thin as a radar screen flickering in the dark. And sometimes, silence, that eerie calm after both sides understand the message, feels more terrifying than any explosion could ever be. At Novastra Defense, we often say, every maneuver tells a story. The Apaches over Poland tell one of uncertainty disguised as control. The Russian S-400s point skyward like watchful eyes, reminding the world that vigilance is both necessary and exhausting. Both sides know the script, but neither can afford to miss a cue. And so the theater continues, act after act, each side pretending the other's move is predictable. Until one day, it isn't. Yet there's a strange irony here. For all the billion-dollar hardware, the real weapon is psychology. The war isn't fought in the skies. It is fought in the perception of those skies. Who appears calm, who appears rattled, who reacts faster, who hesitates longer. It's a war of nerves more than of missiles. And in that contest, laughter, yes, even dark humor, becomes a form of sanity. Because when the world feels one radar glitch away from chaos, the ability to step back, to see the absurdity, might just be humanity's best defense mechanism. So what's the takeaway? That the next great confrontation might not begin with a missile launch, but with a misunderstanding. That strength isn't just measured in firepower, but in restraint. And that sometimes the quietest night sky hides the loudest messages. And maybe, just maybe, that as the point of these exercises, to remind everyone that the real test isn't who's ready for war, but who's wise enough to avoid it. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to subscribe to Novastra Defense, where we explore the fascinating logic and occasional madness behind modern strategy. Tell us in the comments, do you think these US helicopter movements were a harmless drill or a subtle message aimed straight at Moscow? And remember, every great power loves to flex, but true power is knowing when not to, because in the end, peace is the world's most underrated strategy.